The desert sun beat down like a hammer, waves of heat rippling across the firing range as dust devils danced in the distance. A row of young Marine snipers, their rifles gleaming in the light, lined up behind sandbags. They had been at it for hours, their scopes fixed on distant steel targets painted white. But no matter how many adjustments they made, their bullets kicked up dirt inches away from the bullseye. Frustration simmered beneath their disciplined exteriors. They were Marines, sharpshooters, the elite. Yet today, the desert was winning. The range commander, Captain Harris, paced behind them, arms folded tight. He was a hard man, square jaw, iron-gray hair, and the kind of eyes that could cut a recruit in half without saying a word. He'd seen wars come and go, but he wasn't patient when excellence slipped. Today, the pride of the Corps looked clumsy. He barked corrections, but the targets remained untouched. Every miss was an insult echoing in the silence after the shot. The steel didn't sing, it stayed quiet, mocking them. Off to the side, sitting in a folding chair under the shade of an old canvas canopy, was a figure most of the Marines ignored. He wasn't in uniform, just worn jeans, boots caked with dust, and a faded Marine Corps cap pulled low over his brow. His hands rested on a carved wooden cane, his posture straight despite the years carved into his skin. He had come quietly, invited by Harris, but no introductions were made. To the younger Marines, he was just another relic. Probably someone's granddad with old war stories nobody asked to hear. But every now and then, his weathered eyes tracked the line of rifles, the wind whispering across the desert, and the shimmer on the horizon. He saw what they didn't. He had lived what they only trained for. Private First Class Dawson was the first to crack. He ripped off his ear protection and tossed his rifle onto the bench with a clatter. "Sir, with respect, this is impossible. The wind's shifting every 2 seconds. You can't predict it." "Marine, you don't say can't in my range," Harris snapped, his voice like gravel. "You adapt. You overcome." Dawson clenched his jaw, but said nothing. His eyes drifted to the old man under the canopy, who sat perfectly still, like a statue carved from stone. For a second, their gazes met. There was something unsettling about the way those tired eyes seemed to look right through him, as if measuring more than just his shooting. The silence was broken by Harris' bark. Again. Reset and fire. Rounds cracked one after another, brass casings clinking against the dirt, but the desert kept swallowing their pride. Dust plumes rose, targets unmarked. Harris' jaw worked harder with every miss. It was painful to watch. Finally, the old man shifted, leaning on his cane as he rose. The sound of his boots crunching in the sand turned heads. Slowly, he walked toward the firing line. The Marines straightened, glancing at one another. Nobody spoke, but the tension rose. Who was he to walk onto their range? Harris didn't stop him. In fact, Harris' hard face softened for the first time that day. "Gentlemen," he said, his tone carrying weight, "this here is Master Gunnery Sergeant Cole. Retired. Vietnam, Beirut, Desert Storm. The kind of man who's forgotten more about long-range shooting than most of us will ever learn." A ripple went through the line. Suddenly, the relic didn't look so ordinary. His cane wasn't just for walking, it bore small engravings, battle dates scratched into the wood. His cap wasn't just faded cloth, it was history. And his eyes, they held storms. Cole gave a small nod, his voice gravelly but steady. "You boys mind if I take a look?" Nobody dared say no. He stepped up behind Dawson's rifle, adjusted the scope with hands that didn't tremble, and studied the target. The wind tugged at his cap, but he didn't blink. He pressed his lips together, tasting the desert air, watching the tumbleweed roll by, noting the mirage shimmer. Then he chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You're fighting the wind," he said. "But you're not listening to it. She'll tell you what she's doing if you shut up long enough." The Marines exchanged glances. Some smirked, others frowned. It sounded like mysticism, not marksmanship. But Harris stood silent, watching. Cole lowered himself onto the bench, cane resting against the sandbags. He picked up the rifle with a familiarity that made time disappear. The way he checked the bolt, the smooth rhythm of his breathing, the relaxed set of his shoulders, it was like watching an old dance performed by muscle memory. He wasn't fighting the rifle, he was part of it. He settled into position, cheek to stock, and whispered to himself. 200 yards, crosswind 5 left to right, heat shimmer high. His finger curled around the trigger, but he didn't rush. He exhaled, long and steady, the desert breathing with him. The crack of the shot echoed. A heartbeat later, the distant steel sang with a sharp, unmistakable ping. The Marine's jaws dropped. One after another, he cycled the bolt and sent more rounds downrange. Ping, ping, ping. Each one perfect, each one proof that it wasn't the rifle failing, it was them. Cole set the rifle down gently, as if it were alive. He looked at the young faces staring back at him, some wide-eyed, some humbled, some still skeptical. He smiled faintly. Riflemen, not machine gunners. You don't spray and pray. You breathe. You wait. You let the shot come to you. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Even Harris seemed caught in the spell. Then Cole stood, leaning on his cane again, and tapped the rifle with a knuckle. You boys think this is about pulling a trigger. It's not. It's about respect. Respect the rifle, respect the wind, respect the silence between heartbeats. Do that, and the target can't hide. The words settled like dust in the silence. Dawson swallowed hard, shame and awe mixing on his face. Slowly, he nodded and stepped back to the bench, this time with a different posture. He copied Cole's rhythm, slower, steadier, more deliberate. He exhaled, squeezed, and fired. A second later, the steel rang. His eyes widened. The rest of the line straightened, fired again, and one by one, the desert finally gave them victory. Ping, ping, ping. The range filled with the music of steel, sharp and sweet. Cole's eyes softened, pride flickering across his face. For him, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about passing something on, something sacred. When the last shot echoed away, Harris stepped forward and saluted the old Marine. Master Guns, you've done more in an hour than I could have in a week. Cole returned the nod, no arrogance in his expression, only quiet truth. Not me, Captain. The Corps. She doesn't belong to us. We just carry her forward until the next man's ready to shoulder the weight. The sun dipped lower, painting the desert gold. The young snipers gathered around, some asking questions, some just listening. Cole answered each with patience, his voice carrying the wisdom of decades and the ghosts of brothers long gone. He spoke of nights in jungles where the wind smelled of rain and blood, of dunes that swallowed sound, of comrades who made their last shots count. Every story wasn't just about war, but about life, about endurance, about honor. As twilight fell, the Marines stood taller. They weren't just shooters anymore, they were heirs to something greater than themselves. And in the middle of them, the old veteran smiled quietly, knowing that for one more day, his duty wasn't finished. Because sometimes, the Corps doesn't need another bullet. It needs a reminder of who it is. And as the desert swallowed the last light, his words lingered, don't ever forget. Every shot you take isn't yours. It's for the ones who never came home. The screen fades slowly, the echo of steel still ringing in the mind, the silhouette of the old Marine framed against the dying sun. And that is where we leave you. If this story moved you, if you felt the pride, the sacrifice, and the unbroken chain of Marines across generations, then honor them by sharing it. Like this video, leave a comment to carry the legacy forward, and subscribe for more stories that remind us who we are and what we stand for.